What's up? What's up? Happy Monday, everybody. Appreciate y'all tuning in again this week. Talk a little basketball. We'll dive into a little baseball. We can talk some recruiting if you want to. I see we already got one that wants to. Got one I'm going to talk at specifically. And anything else y'all want to chime in on. We'll start with basketball. Tough loss for Clemson in Chapel Hill over the weekend. There's just no other way to say that, man. They just got beat up and down the floor, beat like a drum. This is a team that's just not very good when it comes to rebounding on the offensive end. They're not terrible on the defensive end. They actually out-rebounded North Carolina when it comes to defensive rebounds, but on the offensive glass, North Carolina had almost a 2-1 advantage. They had 11 second chance points. The Tar Heels shot 46% from 3-point line. They were 15 of 33, man, and they were, and it's not like they were all wide open shots, man. The defense wasn't great, but man, they were hitting everything they threw up, everything. It was just they probably played their best game of the year, and Clemson might have played one of their worst. It was a disastrous performance, disastrous. Hunter Tyson took 2 shots the whole game, and that is not the recipe for success. If you're Clemson, you need him involved. You need him heavily involved. He did his thing defense. I mean, on the boards, I think he had 7, 8 rebounds. I can't remember specifically, but he took 2 shots. He was shut down, and he's got to be better than that in these games for Clemson if they are going to get this thing turned around. They've lost 3 straight. They're squarely on the bubble now. I think last time I looked, Lunardi had them as one of the last 4 in. And the schedule doesn't get any easier. They got, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I know they got road games they got Florida State coming in. They got road games to North Carolina State. Virginia still left on the docket. Not easy games at all. I mean, it's not going to get any easier for them. They're probably going to have to get to 14 ACC wins to get in, and they're at 10 right now. So they're going to need to win probably 4 games, at least 3 without question, but probably 4 to get in. And I'm talking about regular season, not ACC tournament. Obviously, you can get in by winning that, but is anybody banking on that happening? Certainly not me. Even with as good as PJ Hall is, they just had no answer for Paycott, North Carolina's big man. He was 8 of 11, 19 points. He just couldn't be stopped. But again, if you're Clemson, you got to get more from Hunter Tyson. You got to find a way to get Chase Hunter going. Man, he is struggling shooting the ball big time, and he's kind of, the first half of the season, he was kind of the spark before he got hurt, especially. He was kind of the spark plug that was making that thing go for a while until they got really entrenched in ACC play. But, he's been struggling lately big time, especially since he came back from his injury. Got to find a way to get him going, man. He's missing shots up near the rim, and it's kind of uncharacteristic for him. No doubt the offensive rebounds got to get better. Conventional wisdom says rebound tends to be about effort. If you watch Clemson play, though, when a shot goes off, they've got 2, 3 guys already sprinting back down the court to get back on defense. And when you got 2 or 3 guys running back down the court, almost as soon as the shot goes off, you're going to like a drum on the offensive boards. The other team's got you outnumbered 4-2, 4-3, 5-2, 5, whatever it is. I don't. Maybe they need to look at the way they do some things there. I don't know, man. I'm not, and it's not just a Clemson thing. That's a college basketball thing these days, and a lot of teams do that. And they want to get back on defense as fast as they can, kind of prevent teams from, getting in fast breaks, scoring fast break points. But there's got to be a happy medium somewhere there, because especially when you're not shooting the ball well. Like Clemson was not shooting the ball well up in Chapel Hill. When you're not shooting it well, you need all the help you can get there on that offensive glass, man. You can't leave it to one or two guys. It's just not working. Just not working. You know, on a positive note, they only turned the ball over 7 times. They had been turning it over a lot. Didn't matter. Again, North Carolina hit 46% from 3, man. And it just – I think Clemson probably could have played their best game and not won. But it's not – we haven't seen this Clemson team get beat like that. Maybe not all season long. I'm trying to remember one off the top of my head, and I can't. But they've been pretty competitive for the most part. Say what you will about them, they've at least been competitive all season. They weren't very competitive Saturday, and that was after having a week off. You know, they've got to find a way to get Alex Hemingway back involved. Seems like they struggled trying to get him back involved in the rotation. He played some early, then he came out, and then we didn't see him no more. Yeah, that's part of it too. But to me, when you take a shot, man, and you got 2 or 3 guys already get running back down the court, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage from the jump. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. Opening day's Friday, man. If we got any baseball fans in here, we get to meet with Eric Bakich one more time tomorrow before the season starts. Maybe we'll find out tomorrow who the weekend rotation is going to be. I assume we will. The only guy I would pencil in for sure at this point is probably Ryan Ammons. I know they've been starting the scrimmages on Fridays, at least a couple of them that I've known about. I've been to one. A buddy of mine's been to one. He started both the Friday scrimmages. Outside of that, I'm not real sure yet. I mean, I think you got to look at guys like Jay Deal, Austin Gordon, Tristan Smith, the freshman. I think they're all candidates. Would lean towards Weiss being your closer. It'd be interesting to see because Bakich is going to have a lot of, not just with the rotation, but just in the lineup period, he's going to have a lot of options at a lot of different spots. Be interesting to see if Blake Wright's playing third or second, and if the freshman Cam Canarella is going to play some third, maybe get Blake Wright at second. And then what you do with Max Starbuck, who supposedly had a fantastic fall. Starbuck was the second baseman for the scrimmages I was at. What do you do with Blackwell now that Riley Bertram's there to play shortstop? Just a lot of questions, man. And he's got to. They're not bad problems to have though, because those are all good baseball players. You just got to find a way to get them some at bats. Just got to find a way to get all those guys some at bats. And if Cooper Ingle starts the season having to DH, kind of recuperating from that injury, that takes a spot away from one of those guys. So we'll see how it plays out, but I'm not sure Ingle is going to start off DH, and I just think it's a possibility. He was catching some at the scrimmages, but I have heard it's a possibility that he can start the season DHing a good bit as they are kind of careful rushing him back from that injury. Two best pitchers I've seen personally, Ty Olenchuk and the transfer from Michigan, Weiss. Olenchuk was dominant the day that I was there. Oh, man, he was dominant. If y'all watched our baseball show Thursday night, I talked a little bit about it. He was routinely hitting 95 on the gun. And Weiss is just downright nasty, left-handed guy. Man, he's got 3 pitches. He's got a nasty breaking ball, slider, or whatever you want to call it. Breaks hard, and his stuff is it's kind of his electric. He's got some nasty stuff, man. That ball's got some movement on it. And he throws strikes. And That is the thing that has stood out to me from the scrimmages that I've been at. The pitchers are throwing strikes. They're not walking a bunch of guys. The weekend I was there, I think there were 2 walks combined. And that is something we have not seen with Clemson pitching in recent years. We've seen a lot of walks, a lot of guys nibbling at the plate. And from what I've seen, guys were pounding the strike zone. And that's what I want to see from this baseball team this year. I want to see pitchers throwing strikes, not nibbling at the strike zone, not trying to pitch around guys, coming right at them. If they hit you, so be it. You got 8 guys behind you, 9 guys, 7 guys behind you, to play defense. That's what they're there for. Hope we can get some more recruits to come to Clemson. I wish I could see who commented that. Got a pretty good idea. Got one guy recruit sends me messages in my Facebook every day. How South Carolina's taking over the state. Beamer's trending up. Clemson's trending down. It's hilarious, man. It is hilarious. Those guys win. I wouldn't even call it a recruiting battle. Get Cam Pringle, and all of a sudden they are taking over the state, man. It is hilarious. We're talking about a guy who was never coming to Clemson, ever. Can't lose a guy you never had. If you want to pencil in Josiah Thompson as a South Carolina commitment already, fine, go ahead. Kid grew up a South Carolina fan. He was always going there if it plays out that way. I'll say this. I know for a fact Clemson's at least giving him something to think about. It ain't as one-sided as some will have you believe. I believe he'll end up there. Dylan's been a pipeline for Carolina. The kid and his family have grown up South Carolina fans. He's dreamed of playing at Williams-Brice all his life. Why wouldn't they end up with him? That's not a big-time recruiting loss. You can frame it that way all you like. Doesn't mean it is. Now, the only one that's really been a battle is for Blake Franks. And we are talking about a guy that's not even ranked in the top 300. So if you want to create your narrative that South Carolina is taking over the state because they beat Clemson out on a kid that doesn't even rank inside the top 300, that's your prerogative. You can run with that, man. Nothing I can do to convince you otherwise. And it's not a given that Franks is going to go to South Carolina. This is a recruitment. This is a kid that is, by all accounts, genuinely conflicted. He does not know where he's going to go yet. This would be one that I would absolutely classify as a recruiting win for South Carolina if they do get him, because this is a kid from Greenville, a kid with, that kind of grew up rooting for Clemson, wanting to play for Clemson. Probably fits the Clemson culture better than he does South Carolina. Clemson's got a way they go about recruiting guys, and it's just the way it is. South Carolina's got a way they go about recruiting guys. On the surface, that kid, the way each school goes about doing things, that kid might feel like South Carolina's recruiting him a little bit harder than Clemson is. I think that's playing a little factor in here with Franks. Clemson's not gonna blow his phone up every day, 24 hours a day. Those coaches in South Carolina might do that. Clemson's not gonna do it. They are telling him he can play immediately. He's very likely to take a red shirt at Clemson. He's not ready to play as a freshman at Clemson, in my personal opinion. They are trying to attract him with the allure of the SEC. They might very well end up getting him. I'll still tell you there are at least a couple of people in his camp that want him at Clemson. He might still very well end up at Clemson. I don't know. I think he's genuinely conflicted right now. If he does end up at South Carolina, it's one kid. It's one kid. You can't claim they're locking up the state because they beat Clemson out on one kid. you can frame it any way you want to. Doesn't make it any more true. I mean, it's not something to get all up in have a hissy fit about. And that's period. Fortunately for Clemson, they don't have to rely on the state of South Carolina for recruiting. South Carolina does far more so than Clemson does. They don't have the national reach that Clemson does right now. I don't care that they did beat Clemson by a point last year. That's not going to get you that reach, that kind of reach that quickly. You have to have it consistent. You have to win consistently over a 2, 3, 4 year stretch before you can even think about getting that kind of recruiting prowess. At the end of the day, recruiting is all about the guys that you hit on. It ain't about the guys you miss on. If I'm a Clemson fan, that is one thing I would not be worried about is South Carolina locking down this state. This might be 1 year finally. Maybe they get a few of the more players than Clemson does, but Clemson's routinely been able to pick and choose who they want out of this state. Go back to the cycle before the last one. Antonio Williams, pulled him right out of their back pocket. Adam Randall, 2 guys they wanted out of this state, got him. Last cycle, they wanted Tyler Williams, got him late. I don't know how interested South Carolina was in him, but Clemson wanted him, got him. It ain't going to work like that 100% of the time. You're not going to get every kid. You can't get in a panic when you miss on one. I tried to tell people all along I didn't think Cam Pringle was ever coming to Clemson. I mean, I thought Clemson was in it, but I never thought he was coming there. I thought he considered him, but I never considered him a favorite. Never thought he was coming. That's a kid that's on the 3-year plan. He wants to play immediately, and he don't have that path at Clemson. He just doesn't have it there. And I don't think either of those 3 guys do. They might have it in Columbia, and that carries some weight with kids. Doesn't mean your program's falling off. Doesn't mean this other program's fixing to overtake you. I mean, you got to beat them more than once, man. I mean, they are a long ways away from owning the state or overtaking Clemson, anything like that. I mean, you can create those narratives all you want. Let's see them beat Clemson in the recruiting rankings for once. Hadn't happened in, what, a decade? Probably since Steve Spurrier. I don't even know if it's happened. I mean, it might be longer than that. I can't remember the last time South Carolina beat Clemson in the recruiting rankings. And it takes more than one recruiting class to build a program, man. I mean, it's going to take him a few years. If you want to worry about that, worry about it. Quit messaging me about it. I'm tired of beating that dead horse. Clemson does get who they want out of this state more often than not. Absolutely. That has, but you're not going to get every guy. You're just not. There are going to be some guys that you miss on. You have to live with that. And you can't panic and whine and complain every time you miss on a guy and say, oh my God, man, the whole thing's falling apart. We might as well mail it in and shut the program down. Because that's not how it works. I gotta listen to my dog for a minute because the wife's on. There you go. 12 years. I knew it'd been at least a decade. 12 years since South Carolina has had a better recruiting class than Clemson. 12 years. But now suddenly they are overtaking Clemson. They are owning the state. Give me a break, man. Devin Brown, sure. Let's see it. This is coming down to a Clemson South Carolina battle. Let's see if they win on this kid. Let's see if they win on Alex Taylor, who South Carolina wants. Let's see if they win on Jonathan Taylor, who they are very much in it for. They might even be the lead for. He might end up going there. Let's see if they win out on him. I mean, Why do we have to relegate it to just the in-state kids? That's kind of like manipulating the numbers. Very rarely does this state even produce a bunch of talent in the same year. It doesn't happen very often. If you're going to make your focus this state the focus of what you do, you're probably going to be in trouble anyways. I mean, let's assume for a minute South Carolina takes over this state. So what? There ain't that many good players coming out of this state. You certainly can't build a national title contending team recruiting the state of South Carolina. You just can't do it. You got to have success recruiting across the whole Southeast at the least. I mean, so let's say they get their pick of the litter out of this state for the next 3 years, which isn't going to happen, but let's say they do. So what? Again, it's been 12 years since they finished with a better recruiting class than Clemson. I feel pretty confident saying they won't finish with one in 2024. We'll see what happens in 2025. I mean, seems like almost every recruiting cycle, or maybe not everyone, but more often than not, early in that recruiting cycle, South Carolina somewhere in the top 10, top 12, and they're all excited. And then they come back down to reality, and they're closer to 25 than they are 10. Bingo. There is far more talent in Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida than there is South Carolina every single year. And what people don't – I mean, there's another thing you got to remember. The majority of this state are probably South Carolina fans. I know on this side of the state where I live, it don't even seem to be close. It's heavy Gamecock country. Again, Josiah Thompson goes to Dillon. They've been a pipeline for South Carolina. Kid grew up a South Carolina fan. If you were being recruited by South Carolina and Clemson, and you grew up a diehard Clemson fan, would you even consider going to play for South Carolina? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, I just think we get caught up in the moment and we don't look at the big picture, and people tend to panic. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and we are in a world where everybody wants something right now. Some of these recruitments ain't going to end right now, man. You got to be patient. Got to see how they play out. Heck, one of the top players in the country from Georgia, Sammy Brown, linebacker, Clemson's dead in it. South Carolina's nowhere to be found. I mean, that's just fact, man. You can't measure Clemson's success by what they do in this state. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, South Carolina fans were not very happy with the guy they hired at offensive coordinator. Garrett Riley was the guy most of them had at the top of their list. Then they hire, Loggins, and it was a big let down. Comes out and hires the guy they want. Absolutely, that's a perception-wise, it's real. I mean, how much of a dent? I mean, let's be honest. South Carolina's got some recruiting momentum. Make no mistake. I'm not saying they don't. My whole point is more towards this. No reason for Clemson fans to be panicking and saying South Carolina suddenly owns this state, because I don't see it that way at all. But I absolutely think Garrett Riley's hiring is going to have an impact on recruiting. It just might not be immediate. It might start to see it. You might start seeing it in the summer. Once some of these guys get to know Riley a little bit better, been around him a little bit, especially after the official visit weekend, that's when Clemson's going to do some of their best work. Make no mistake. Got some guys they're looking at bringing in the spring that don't even have offers yet. Some offensive guys. One of them's a receiver. What was his name? I can't even remember his name now. But I think we'll start seeing Riley's impact the further we get into the summer. It's not going to be immediate. It's not going to pay off with a bunch of commits right now. That's just not how recruiting works. But I think it will start to pay off the further we get into this recruiting cycle and into the 2025 cycle. South Carolina hired a guy whose offense was named the worst in the NFL. Dude don't stay anywhere more than a year or two. You can say the same thing about Garrett Riley, but he's only been an offensive coordinator for 3 years. Big difference. We got a prediction. Sammy will be a Tiger. I think that's a distinct possibility. I would say right now it's Clemson and Georgia. Still think he's going to take some officials in June. Probably get a decision in July. Probably see him put out a top 5 or something here shortly. There it is. There it is, folks. Which I know this is just sarcasm. But this is the kind of message I get every day. Every day. And it's not sarcasm. I get it every day from the same dude. Every day. And it ain't just FSU's back. Hell, this guy thinks Texas is back, Miami's back, Tennessee's back. He got some people back that ain't never even been there before. Everybody's back. But that's what I get every day right there. And it's just beating a dead horse over and over and over and over. I have to restrict him sometimes, man. Or I can't see it. Bingo. You don't have to lock up South Carolina for players because you have reach. You have a national reach. You have shown you can go and get players out of Georgia. You can get them out of Alabama. Clemson's been plucking a player or two out of Texas the last few classes. They've shown they can go all the way out to California and get them if need be. They ain't worked out so well so far, but they've shown they can go get them. They've shown they can go in. They didn't have a lot of success in North Carolina in 2023. But they have, over the years had a ton of success in North Carolina. They made up for that lack of success in North Carolina last class for what they did in Georgia by doing what they did in Georgia. No, but there's something to be said about going and being, having a national brand. And I don't think South Carolina can recruit on that level yet. I mean, I'm not saying that because we're talking Clemson, South Carolina. That's just the way I look at it. That's me being as real as I can be. I just don't think South Carolina can recruit on that level. Not consistent. I'm not saying they can't ever go out and get a guy from out of state. We saw them go get Nicholas Harbor. But they ain't going to do it consistently on a level that Clemson does it. Not right now. Not yet. They're just not there. Yeah, we got. I know some people that think it's over, and you know what? If it is over, I feel bad for some of those people because they never did enjoy the ride. Man, you gotta live in the present and enjoy the ride. When I was growing up, I was a kid when Clemson won the national title in 1981, and my young adult years was through the Hatfield, Tommy West, Tommy Bowden days. Um, and I never, ever thought Clemson would ever compete for a national title again. Ever. Not even when Dabo was hired. Um, that first year they made it to the playoff, and I can't remember what they started 8-0, 9-0, whatever it was, and all the fans were talking playoff. I wouldn't even let myself say the word because I knew the gut punch was coming. I had seen it year after year after year after year. That gut punch was coming. I wouldn't even let myself believe they had a shot at making the playoff until they beat Florida State. I think it was late. It was in November of that season, if I'm not mistaken, in 2015. That first year they made the playoff. I think when they beat Florida State at home, when Wayne Gallman ran that touchdown in with about 2 minutes to go, that was when I finally realized they actually had a shot. Dabo had taken that final step with them. And something I never thought I'd see again. And if they would have never made it to another playoff after that 2015 season, I'd have been as happy as a pig in mud just seeing them make it there because I never thought they would have made it there again, even though they didn't win it. I could have never imagined the run that was coming after that at that time. I mean, I knew they were good, but if you'd have told me after that first year that they were going to make 6 straight playoff appearances, I probably wouldn't have believed it. Told me they were going to win 2 titles in 3 years, I definitely wouldn't have believed it. Here we are, though, man. You got to make sure you enjoy the ride and don't always stay looking at tomorrow. Sometimes tomorrow just don't come. They got a walk-on coming from Hawaii in this class, if I'm not mistaken. That's if we're talking about the same guy. This Clemson definitely has some clout that they're not swinging the same kind of stick on the recruiting trail as say Georgia is right now. But to think they don't have any clout at all, that would just be wrong because they do. Dabo Swinney's made this thing to where kids covet just getting an offer from Clemson. No, they're not going to all come play for you, but they all want that offer because just getting offered by Clemson means something. They don't hand out 300 every class. They hand out 100 or so, and that's it. For 2024 so far, they've handed out 40-something in total. 40-something kids have been offered. You're not going to find many other programs, maybe Stanford, Duke, couple, and very few have offered that few of kids. Most of them are in the hundreds by now, easy. And they'll be up over 300 before it's all said and done. Clemson would probably get up around 110, 120, something like that. And their hit rate will probably be 23, 24%. They'll hit on a bunch of those guys. Bet you if I go look at South Carolina's numbers, they ain't hitting on 23, 24% of their guys. Yep, got to enjoy the ride, man. Enjoy the ride. Blake Franks was already going to be a guy I talked about tonight, anyways, because I get asked about him a lot. Latest I've heard is he's conflicted. He's struggling with this decision. Nobody doesn't really know which way he's leaning right now, to be honest. Depends on who you ask. Somebody say somebody tell you South Carolina. Ask somebody else, they'll tell you Clemson. A couple people will try to tell you that Auburn's still in it, which I don't buy that for a minute. But probably looking at an early March decision on him because I don't think he's really struggling with this thing. Clemson's already got one corner in this class, Tavoy Fagan. Probably only going to take one more corner. It's possible maybe they add a third before it's all said and done. But I think the number's 2 as we sit here today. Ashton Hampton's a name to keep an eye on. Alabama, Miami, Oklahoma, they all just offered. He's not a guy that's going to commit here in the immediate future. He's going to take some June official visits, but just Ashton Hampton's a name to keep an eye on. He's got some ties to the school through his daddy. Just down there from the Florida area. Very, very long, athletic corner, typical Mike Reed corner. The wide receiver I was trying to think of a minute ago, Jeremiah McClellan. He's top 150, top 200 talent. That's a name to. I think it's going to. I don't even remember what I was going to say about him now. Man, I went off on a tangent. Don't even remember what I was going to say. Absolutely. Every offer from Clemson is committable. Not the same way at other schools. They'll offer you and won't tell you can't commit right now. I'm thinking somewhere 21, 22, 23 range right now. That's what it looks like. Not a huge class. If you go back and look at Clemson's signing class numbers, ever since Dabo Swinney's been head coach, every fourth year they'll have that big class. And last year was that fourth year. And it kind of started that way by a fluke due to that first class only having 12 members in it. So he needed a big class the next year. And ever since then, that every fourth year he's had to have a big class. And it's been that way for over a decade now. It might not ever change. It's kind of started to even out a little bit now. So I thought they might take as many as 28 guys in the last class. I think they ended up signing, 26, 27. I don't think they got to 28, and that's counting transfer. Probably 22 in that range for the next one. Depending on how many guys bolt that they're not expecting to bolt. You got players like Trotter, Carter. They're going to be eligible for the draft next year, depending on what kind of season they have. They get it early. Will Shipley will be eligible. Maybe he's a guy that can potentially leave early, which I'm not sure. We'll see. It depends on what kind of season he has, but there's a handful of guys that'll be at least eligible for the draft. So a lot of that will depend on how many they lose early. The running back target, David Ejiofor. I forgot how to say it again already. Still the only running back we'd offer, obviously. Nothing's really changed there. Don't see him committing before March, though. I think he wants to get his mother back to campus. He hasn't been there yet. So I don't think we're on the verge of a decision. Clemson's not really pressuring to make one at this time. But once we get into March and once spring practice starts, if he doesn't pull the trigger fairly quickly, you can expect the board to expand. They're not going to stay with him as the only offer for very long. Once we get into the spring, they will amp up the pressure at that. I feel like they'll amp up the pressure at that time, tell him, hey, either you want to jump on board or we got to start looking elsewhere. That's the only realistic thing to do. Who they look towards next, I have no idea. I know there was a couple of guys Spiller went and visited, in December and January. I think one of them was Nate Palmer. But, you got to wonder if it's too late to get in on a guy like that. So, let's see how it plays out. I still like Clemson's chances with the running back, though. The only way to me, as we sit here today, I guess something can change, The only way Clemson misses out on him is if he decides he needs to stay closer than a couple of hours away from home. He needs to be closer than that to his home. To me, that's the only way Clemson misses on him. And with some guys, that matters. I think I touched on last week, how close him and his mom are. I think she's a single mom, and she hasn't been able to go on any visits with him. So he's hoping to get her to Clemson in March. Yeah, I fully expect Clemson to take quarterback, no doubt. They've taken one every year for ever since Dabo. I think they've taken one pretty much every class, most of Dabo's tenure. Just because they missed, they need one in this class. After this year, you're only going to have two on scholarship. Absolutely need one in this class. And I know Hunter Helms has been on scholarship. He started as a walk-on, so I'm not counting him in that. It's not a knock on him. It's just the way I count him. But you need one in this class. He doesn't have to be this big-time high 4-star, high 5-star guy, but you need somebody. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to the portal again probably and find another one-year grad transfer. See, why can't Clemson land a big-time running back anymore? Have they ever consistently landed all these big-time running backs, though? I don't think they have. Shipley was one. DeMarcus Bowman was one. Other than that, off the top of my head, Clemson's developed their running backs. ETN wasn't this big-time recruit coming out of high school. Wayne Gallman wasn't this big-time recruit coming out of high school. Maffa wasn't this big-time recruit coming out of high school. Don't get me wrong, they were 4-star guys, but they weren't like high 4 stars, low 5 stars. They were top 200, top 300 guys. They weren't these elite level running backs coming out of high school. Clemson developed them into those guys. Sure, there's been the exception like Shipley and DeMarcus Bowman, who didn't even stay here. There might be one I'm missing, but for the most part, Clemson's done very well at finding guys to fit what they want to do and developing those guys. Again, I think they found a diamond in the rough with Jay Haynes in the last class. I might be proven to be wrong on that. He's got to put on some weight, try to keep that speed he's got. Long ways to go with him to see what he develops into. But I think he's got a lot of potential. But this process that Clemson has for recruiting running backs, this isn't new either. It's the way they do it. They recruit 1 or 2 at a time, and it's been that way for a while now. Why is it that way? I can't give you a solid answer on that. The most I can tell you is that Clemson looks at running backs as one of the, just like offensive linemen, they're some of the slowest players to develop at the high school level. So they prefer to take their time with it. And up until, when the 2022 cycle, when they stayed on ETN all class, up until then, it's a strategy that's worked well for them. We'll see, if it works, how it plays out this cycle. Because so far they've only offered the one, haven't expanded the board yet. It's not. I'm not trying to defend the process or the way they go about doing it. I'm not a big fan of it either. It's just the way it is. Paul Tyson will be gone after this season, though. After this season, they'll only have 2 scholarship quarterbacks. So you need a 2024 guy. I mean, you need 3. You need at least 3. Fall camp. Got to be at 85 because the summer enrollees aren't on campus yet, so you don't have to be at 85 yet. So when those guys get on campus and you begin fall camp, you got to be at 85. So not before spring, not at the end of spring. Got a little ways to go before we get to that yet. I'll be extremely surprised if there's no attrition after the spring. Clemson was very fortunate to not have any at all after the spring last year. Yeah, softball started the season unbeaten. I think they're up to number 6 in the country now. Valerie Cagle showing why she's on multiple award watch lists. Very fast start for her. Then they got a game at Furman Tuesday, and then they'll come home this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So baseball and softball will be home this weekend. Anything else? All right. Well, I will bid y'all an adios. Appreciate y'all tuning in, man. We'll see y'all next Monday.